2025 confused a lot of people. We didn't get a housing crash like some predicted. We didn't get a boom either. And yet, the housing market did change, especially in the second half of the year. Headlines were extreme, opinions were loud, and a lot of buyers and sellers were left wondering, what the heck is going on? So in this video, I'm going to break down what really happened in the housing market in 2025, both nationally and right here in the upstate of South Carolina. And more importantly, I want to talk about what I realistically see coming in 2026, not based on hype, but based on real data and what I'm seeing working with buyers and sellers and so many of you that are relocating here every week. No fear, no fluff, just clarity for anyone considering making the move to the upstate of South Carolina. As always, my friends, my name is Sawyer, your friend in real estate here in the upstate of South Carolina, and it's our goal with this channel that we are your #1 resource for all the things that you need to know about your relocation to the upstate. We aim to provide you with the most relevant, the most reliable, the most practical, and the most data-driven information that you can or can't find on the internet. If you are thinking about making a move to our area in 2026, please do me a favor, email me at my email below or shoot me a text at my cell phone number below. I would love to meet you and get you home here in the upstate. Before we talk about housing, we have to talk about the economy because housing doesn't just exist in a vacuum. Nationally, the U.S. economy cooled in 2025, but it did not break. The labor market softened compared to the last few years. Unemployment crept into that low 4% range, which might sound concerning at first, but historically, that's still a fairly healthy job market. What really changed, however, was momentum. Hiring slowed, job openings normalized, and businesses became more cautious. GDP stayed positive overall, but growth was uneven. Some quarters were stronger than others. This was not a recession economy. It was just a slowdown economy. A year where consumers and businesses pumped the brakes, reassessed, and became more intentional instead of charging forward like they have in years past. Inflation also cooled significantly from its 2022 highs, but it certainly did not disappear. And this is where a lot of people misunderstood what was happening. Inflation cooling does not mean prices go backward. It means prices stop rising as fast, and that distinction matters, especially when we start talking about housing. Now here's where Greenville starts to separate itself. Locally, the upstate economy remained relatively strong throughout 2025. We continued to see job growth tied to manufacturing, healthcare, logistics, and professional services. Greenville, Spartanburg, and Anderson counties added thousands of jobs during the year. Major employers did not pull out of the upstate, and in fact, they moved to the upstate. And the region continued to attract people moving here for work, for a better lifestyle, and for retirement. So while the national economic sentiment was cautious, and for good reason, given everything that unfolded in 2025, Greenville's economy stayed resilient. People may have felt uneasy, but they were still moving here, still accepting jobs, and still planning long-term lives in the upstate. And that local stability plays directly into housing demand. Now, let's talk about housing, because this is where the disconnect between headlines and reality really showed up in 2025. Nationally, home sales stayed roughly the same as they have for the past couple of years, which also happens to be the lowest level of home sales we've seen in nearly 20 years. And the reason closed units stayed so low this year, just like last year, it's important to understand. People didn't stop necessarily wanting to buy houses. It's just that in order to do so, they had to have a very compelling reason. Across the country, the buyers who were active in 2025 were mostly the folks who had to make a move. Those who were relocating for work, moving closer to kids and grandkids, or retiring and relocating for a better overall quality of life than where they have lived for years. What largely disappeared was the discretionary buyer, people moving simply because they wanted something different. One of the biggest drivers behind that shift was that rate lock-in effect. As it has been for a couple of years now, millions of homeowners are sitting on mortgage rates in the 2s and 3% range. Giving that up for a 6 or a 7% rate earlier this year requires a very strong reason, like following grandkids, leaving an overly expensive state, or relocating for work. For many homeowners, that reason just was not there. Home prices also didn't do what a lot of people expected. Despite all the talk of a crash, national home prices remained above their long-term trend. And even though prices were still above that historical trend line, price growth did slow significantly in 2025. Monthly prices, especially in the latter part of the year, did flatten in many markets, but we did not see this broad price reset. Now, let's bring this home here in Greenville. Here in the Upstate, we saw many of the same patterns, but with more resilience. Buyer activity did slow, but demand did not disappear. Homes that were well priced, well located, and well presented still sold, and sold relatively quickly. Homes that missed the price mark sat on the market and often had to reduce their price, ultimately selling for less than they could have if they had priced correctly from the start. Inventory in Greenville in 2025 rose by double-digit percentage points compared to 2024. Prices rose just over 4% year over year, and closed sales were up nearly 9% year over year, a sharp contrast to much of the national housing market. Normally, when inventory rises that significantly, you'd expect prices to move inverse to that, downward. That did not happen. Instead, we returned to a healthier, a more sustainable rate of appreciation, roughly 3 to 4% year over year, in a market that's far more balanced than it has been in the last 5 years. It's become harder and harder to sell listings, and buyers suddenly had far more choices than they did the year before. So with that as the backdrop, let's talk about what comes next. What is 2026 going to shape up to be? Now, nationally, most economists are expecting a positive recovery in the housing market in 2026 after several years of suppressed activity driven by affordability challenges. Forecasts are calling for a meaningful rebound in existing home sales compared to a slow pace since 2022. One of the biggest drivers behind that expected recovery is the combination of slower mortgage rates and improving inventory. If rates drift closer to that 6% range, which many analysts are thinking that is going to happen, that alone could unlock a large group of buyers who have been waiting on the sidelines by high borrowing costs, including first-time home buyers, move-up buyers, and even some sideline renters. At the same time, more inventory is expected to come to the market across the country. That does not mean oversupply necessarily, but it does mean that buyers should have more options, which helps improve affordability, 1, and 2, decision-making. This isn't a dramatic boom, but after years of stagnation, even incremental improvements are going to matter. When it comes to pricing, national forecasts are calling for continued modest appreciation as we have seen the last couple of years. Home values are expected to rise at a more sustainable pace, supported by ongoing demand and the reality that housing supply remains historically constrained. So the national story for 2026 is not collapse, and it is not another frenzy. It's recovery and stabilization. A market that opens up a bit more for buyers while still rewarding sellers who price and position their home correctly. Now let's talk specifically about Greenville and the upstate of South Carolina. Locally, I expect 2026 to continue to shift toward balance that started in 2025. We're not heading into a downturn, but we're also not going back to the chaos of the last few years. Inventory should continue to rise gradually, giving buyers more options and more confidence. Price growth here is likely to remain in that healthy 3 to 4% range, just like it has been this year, rather than double-digit appreciation we saw in 2021 and in 2022. That's good for buyers, good for sellers, and it's good for the long-term stability of our local real estate market. New construction, of course, will continue to play a major role in the upstate, especially as builders continue to use incentives to help offset monthly payments and incentivize buyers to purchase their home over resale homes. Lifestyle-driven demand, including relocation buyers, retirees, and second home buyers, say on Lake Kiowee, are going to remain resilient in my opinion as well. People aren't moving to Greenville because it's trendy. No, they're moving here because of long-term quality of life, relative affordability compared to where they're coming from, and strong economic fundamentals. And more than ever, micro markets are gonna matter. Neighborhoods, school zones, price points, and property types will have a bigger impact on outcomes in 2026 than national headlines ever would. Two homes a mile apart could perform very differently depending on how they are positioned, and I've seen this firsthand starting last year and especially this year. All in all, 2026 is likely to look like a more refined version of 2025. Gradual price growth, a modest uptick in closed sales, and interest rates that continue to move around, but likely continue to hover around that 6% range. So if there's one takeaway from all of this, it's this. 2026 isn't about timing the market. It's about understanding it. Let's take, for example, the cost of waiting. If you've waited for the last 3 years to purchase a home, waiting for prices to fall, you've likely missed out on tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars in appreciation while you've been spending money on rent and to save a couple $100 a month in your mortgage payment. So to potentially save $10,000 over a span of 2 years in mortgage payments, you've cost yourself $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in appreciation. Don't continue to make that same mistake. Jump into the housing market, start building your equity, and start changing your family's future. I hope all of this information was helpful in helping you get clarity on what the 2026 housing market is going to look like right here in Greenville. All in all, it's going to look pretty much the same as it has in 2025. So if you are thinking about making a move to the Upstate, please do me a favor. Email me at my email below. Shoot me a text at my cell phone number below, and let's get you home here in the Upstate. As always, my friends, my name is Will Sawyer, your friend in real estate, and until next time, stay safe. Well, this video is going to be a about Greenville County, the Upstate of South Carolina. Great thing to do and easily in the evening. I'm a local real estate expert here in the area. All time, we're right behind me is a really cool place called Freight Yard.